Howdy everybody, this is the Roaming Prepper channel and I'm your host Pete. I appreciate you guys coming by. Today we're going to go down an update of the international news that I'm picking up through government, social media, public media, MSM, as well as corporate and other entities and State Department, kind of a compilation. Everything I have should be public release to my knowledge. Actually, I'm pretty sure all of it is, and hopefully that doesn't get me in trouble because I slipped somewhere. But in any case, I'll be right back and we're going to go through all the information that I've got. Just hang on just a second. All right, folks, welcome back. I'm going to start. So I have a compilation of stuff. It was actually so much that once again I had to print everything out. So I'm going to try, and I lost my glasses again because I'm not used to having glasses. I was blessed that I made it almost to 50 before I needed reading glasses. And I can still kind of read if I put it down here. But anyway, I'd mentioned on previous videos that smaller countries like Sri Lanka, South Africa, they've been struggling with a lot of things: inflation, food supply, fuel, etc. And now they're starting to see that serious economic and social upheaval, right? Things are starting to really go sideways for these folks. And that's important for us to know, because it's easy to say, well, that's South Africa, or that's Ecuador, or that's wherever. But these patterns repeat, right? When people are put under duress, historically speaking, look at Marie Antoinette, right? The reason she wound up losing her head and having a little dog taken by a rebel was because she was in denial. She was saying, let them eat cake, which, by the way, back then wasn't like a birthday cake or even a piece of bread. It was like the scraps in the oven that they would give to poor people after they cooked good bread for the rich folks. And people were hungry. There was essentially the equivalent of a depression. There wasn't a stock market back in those days. And there was, or not the way we have it today. And these folks were hungry. They were desperate. They were pissed off. Their leaders weren't paying attention. And ultimately, they had revolution. This kind of situation toppled the Tsar. It collapsed the Ottomans. It led to World War I eventually. And, you know, it led to Marie Antoinette losing her head. I mean, these things happened because people were put under duress, but the historical pattern's there. When you see this duress, this stress, whether it's inflationary, food supply, plague, illness, whatever it is, and the leaders aren't perceived to be doing the right things, the people will eventually get pissed off. And not necessarily all on the same side. They may get pissed off at each other, so you have infighting between the civilians, and then you have fighting against the government. And I'm starting to see those. Now, I made a recent video, Are These the Canaries in the Cave? It was a couple of weeks back, so I'll try and put the link up here if I remember. But these kind of scenarios where you have governments starting to come apart in a large scale, that's not a good thing. So we're going to go, I'm going to start here with, and again, it's a compilation email, so let me see where the hell I was supposed to start here. Okay, let's start with page 1. That would make sense. So the Democratic and Africa, so we're going to start with Africa. So South Africa, police hunt a gunman who fired 135 rounds into a bar. And also in Togo, there's a blast. They didn't give a lot of details, but the military is responding, claiming it was some kind of insurgent group that's angry at the government. Then in the Congo, there's groups of people were killed inside a church hospital. You're seeing a lot of that instability continuing in Africa. Those were from respectively Reuters, News Digest, and Barron's Business News. So these kind of reports you've seen in the small countries, right? The Ghanas, the Nigerias, where they battle. Now here's where it gets interesting. So Nigeria, which is a very oil-rich and resource-rich country, gunmen abduct an oil mogul in Kogi. So a CEO of a company in that nation who has very high influence, it would be like, you know, kidnapping an Elon Musk type of person. They actually ran into his home, killed his security guards, and took him and his family hostage. Now it doesn't update if they are asking for any kind of ransom or any demands, so it wasn't in the scope. That's from News Digest. So in Africa, we're starting to see the smaller countries are continuing with the erratic behavior, but the seeing a oil CEO get kidnapped, that's a new one, because it happens in Mexico, it's happened in South America, it could happen here, right? So we move from there, and you're still seeing that instability in Africa, but now we're seeing it in other countries. So we're going to move on. So all of you saw Sri Lanka's president, and this is now East Asia Pacific, or Central Asia, if you will. So China and Pakistan are doing naval drills to counter the US and its allies doing naval drills. Now think about that. We spent billions of dollars in Pakistan during the war in Afghanistan for support, for logistics, whatever. And now they are somehow allied with China, not a big surprise, doing naval drills in proximity to our naval drills. At the same time, you have NATO forces, naval forces in the Black Sea zooming around Russian forces. So you kind of see that pattern here. You have countries posturing with one another because there's stress over geopolitical issues. They're trying to influence the outcome of resources, trade routes, and this is not a good thing. That's from the South China Morning Post. Then you go to Sri Lanka. So as we all know, the Sri Lankan economy has officially collapsed. The president fled in a military vessel. So right now the protesters are having a party in the presidential palace. And there was a video, I don't remember if it was on Twitter or TikTok, and they were like in the pool, they had their kids there, they're drinking fancy wine, they're being all bougie. The people are pissed off. They're like, we don't have food and your ass is in a mansion. And that is the Marie Antoinette effect, right? You ignore the people and the people are gonna get pissed, and then they're gonna go and tear shit up, and that's exactly what happened. Now, part of the reason Sri Lanka collapsed was their economy was heavily tourist-based. With the Rona, the tourism collapsed, but the government did not have alternative plans. Normally, Sri Lanka, which is a tropical island, it's a very large island, would have sufficient food, but because of the economic issues and the supply chain issues, they couldn't get fertilizer, they couldn't import certain things, and nobody was buying their exports because they couldn't get them in a timely manner, and they had no contingency. They were a highly leveraged country, and bam, there goes Sri Lanka. And that was not a small situation. So those kind of things. Now, we've already talked about Sri Lanka. I've mentioned riots in Ecuador, but now we go from there to, since we're down in, sorry, I lost my track here. Since we were just down in South and Central Asia, right, regarding China, let's continue in that. We're going to go to the east of Sri Lanka and India, and we're going to start talking about East Asia and the Pacific. So Burma, in order to watch its population, is installing Chinese-made surveillance cameras, which are really just going to be a bunch of eyes and ears for the Chinese government to watch everyone in Burma, and the Burmese government as well, obviously. These cameras will have facial recognition capabilities. Now, we have that in the States, we have that in Europe, we have that in Canada, we have that in South America, but this is literally going to be all over the streets. This is a government who's allied with China and is trying to crack down because they've had some issues in the streets there. Speaking of China, Chinese security forces attack protesters seeking their frozen funds. This is from the New York Times. The Burma story was from Reuters. The Chinese banks in one of the provinces basically had some kind of issue, and they told folks, you need to take your money out because, you know, the bank is having an issue. but then they wouldn't let the people take the money out. The government froze their funds. So people had no funds. They couldn't use a debit card, they couldn't use a credit card, and they couldn't get cash. So they got pissed off. So they went and protested the bank. Then it broke into a riot. Then the military came and had basically a big fist fight. They didn't shoot anyone to my knowledge, at least not that we've heard of, but you know they probably did. They were beaten, kicked, dragged to the ground, and then a lot of them were taken away in the paddy wagon, probably went to military jail somewhere. Another thing you'll start seeing happened in Sri Lanka, happened in Ecuador, it happened in China. And China's surprising because China's the big country, right? They're having issues. I think they're having a lot more issues than we in the West know because they keep a good lid on things, but there's only so much they can keep a lid on, right? I mean, there's a billion freaking people to watch. So what wound up happening is because of whatever economic issue that province had, the government said, no, we're just going to shut the banks. And the people flipped out. And so they sent the military to quell the people. And keep in mind the Chinese military deployed in that area is probably not from that area, right? They're from somewhere else. They just came in. They don't know these people. This is not their home. This is a different province. So they just beat the crap out of the people there because they don't give a shit. Again, these are the kind of things you need to watch out for. Runs on banks, runs on government buildings, which we're already seeing here in the States. After Roe v. Wade, regardless of where you stood on the Roe v. Wade, people went and rioted in state houses all over the country. It's just like 2020. I mean, Antifa and BLM basically made the chop. They carved out an entire piece of a city and wouldn't let anyone in or out. So obviously, these kind of symptoms are concerning. Now, you've noticed we've gone from the little African countries to the mid-sized Asia-Pac countries. Now we're going to China. China's having bank riots. That's a problem. Iran, lost my track here. Okay, so now keep going to the West. We're going to go to the US of A and to the Western Hemisphere, through USA and South America and Canada. So Argentina anti-government protests billed as the president calls for unity. This is from Reuters as well. The Argentine President Alberto Fernandez called for unity as protesters marched to the Capitol, to the gates of the palace, because of soaring inflation and a crushing national debt. Again, the inflation, the debt, and the governments didn't have a way to deal with it. Argentina, those of you who follow me from Argentina, you know you're already dealing with really massive inflation. It's what, 100% inflation at the moment? And it's just barely teetering and going into like the thousands. That's a bad thing. Mexico, Tijuana is among the hardest hit cities by inflation. They're seeing a massive uptake in street crime, which is then hurting the tourism, which is how the money comes in. So now people don't want to go to Tijuana, and that's hurting Mexico even more. So, and then Brazil party official shot dead as pre-election political violence escalates. Now here's major countries now, guys. China, Sri Lanka, Argentina, Ecuador, Brazil. These are not small countries, and you notice several of them are from the BRICS, B-R-I-C-S group. They're struggling. Brazil, and a local official from Brazil's leftist opposition party worker was shot dead by a federal prison guard who supported the right-wing president. And they wound up arresting the guard because you don't do that. It doesn't matter if you're a cop or not. You can't go shooting people for no reason. Now that's a problem too. Brazil is not a small economy. Argentina is not a small economy. Venezuela's already in the toilet. We all know that because most of the Venezuelans who saw it coming wound up in the States, especially Florida and Texas. We have huge Venezuelan populations, which I have a lot of Venezuelan friends and I love them because they get it. And they've seen communism go down, take a country down the toilet, and they don't like that either. So they're always welcome to my house parties, that's for sure. But again, you notice, went from the little countries to the bigger countries, and this is going to be a continuing problem. Now, I did miss something here, guys. Bear with me just a second. And, nope, that's Australia, but that's a training class. Bangladesh is another one. Bangladesh shouldn't experience a Sri Lankan style collapse because Bangladesh got smart. Apparently, they've taken some maneuvers to try and level off their economy, and they didn't get over leveraged. So hopefully Bangladesh can hold their own. That's not a small area either. But do you see, and now keep in mind, most recently we had Prime Minister Boris Johnson had to step down because he or someone in his circle was being a creeper. Now you have Japan, former Prime Minister Abe, who was very well respected, even by his foes, get shot to death in the streets. You see what's happening here, guys. We're going from the small countries to the medium countries to the large countries to the big, big countries. And we're starting to see that same pattern. Inflationary effects, instability, crime starts increasing, and then people start lashing out. They lash out at each other, they lash out at the other party, they lash out at the government. These are the patterns that precede problems. You add to that, even though oil and gas are coming down in price, and we're seeing it in some places at the pump, they don't know if that's going to sustain. So, and again, we have a lot of moving parts, so it's really hard to predict what the hell is going on. But these are things we have to watch out for, right? These are the patterns you see. It starts in the street small, in a regional level, and then starts to grow up. We've already had a rush on the Capitol, which, whether you agree or disagree with what they did, that was not a bright idea. It just made a mess. But the previous year, the other side was burning cities all over the country. Take your pick. We're seeing it. We've been seeing it in the U.S. Right now, Italy, there's several countries in Europe that have decided to cut emissions by shutting down 20 or 30% of the farms. The farmers now have no livelihood, so they're pissed off, and they drove their tractors into the cities. And now they've clogged up the cities, and now they're having a shit show. So we're seeing the people rising up against their governments almost across the board. And we're seeing violence between the groups of people as well, because not all of them are on the same page. These are the kind of situations you need to be aware of. Now, you can't control any of this, right? But the way it affects us, supply chain, if you get massive inflation in Europe, it's eventually going to hurt us here just because of the way everything's interconnected. Also, Iran reported a massive internet hack. Sorry, I missed that one. This was, bear with me a second here. Yes, called Predatory Sparrow. Iran, they don't know who Predatory Sparrow is. They suspect it's Israel, but Israel's like, no, we didn't do that. That's someone else, because they always do that. These hackers actually hacked into a massive steel mill in Iran, caused the machinery to spill molten steel onto the equipment, and caused a fire. Remember a few years ago that someone hacked a water plant, I think it was in Florida, and tried to put a shit pile of chemicals in the water, but somebody caught it and they just shut the plant down, which was an inconvenience. We have hackers now trying to use the chaos to physically enact physical damage, not just internet, take out your phone, take out your internet webs, take out your damn bank account. No, they're trying to physically catch things on fire, physically blow things up, physically poison people. That's a whole new dimension of shit that we could get into. So guys, we're starting to see that instability, and when it happens over here, either countries lash out or it screws up trade and it comes back to visit you at home. So what are your takeaways, right? What can we learn from this? Well, one, situational awareness is key when you're going about your business. When you're going to Walmart, going to Sam's, going to work, coming from work, picking up the kids at school, even if you're just going for a walk with the dog, watch what's going on around you. Be prepared for the very real possibility, and this is something that is always in the back of my mind. I could go to a business meeting in Dallas or Tulsa or Denver or whatever and walk out in a business suit and my backpack and have a full-blown frickin' riot in the streets, and I'm in a suit, right? That's not something that's high on my list of things to do. So maintain your situational awareness. If you're traveling, do your homework at the new location, wherever you're going. If you're going from A to B, do your homework on B. What's going on in the streets? Are there any protests? If you have local clients or local colleagues, call them. If you have family, even better. Hey, what's going on in town? What do I need to watch out for? Right now, New Orleans is having a massive uptick in crime. I have family that lives in that area. So, I have to go down there. I'm calling. Hey, what's going on? What do I need to be looking out for? Areas I should be avoiding? What has gone downhill? What streets are just not what they used to be? That way I'm informed, and it also dictates what I pack, how I dress, what I wear, where I put my money in what pocket, you know what I mean? So anyway, situational awareness, 1. 2, try to have some reserve cash if you can. I know with the economy the way it is, not possible for everyone, but always a good idea, even if it's just 20 bucks. 20 bucks can get you a tank of gas, or half a tank now. If you can pull off a couple of $100 in your suitcase and your different pockets, hell, $100 you could get a cheap hotel, a meal, and half a tank of gas in today's prices. Get you off the street if you run into something. Get off the street, park your rental car, and get the hell out into the hotel room. So 2, have some cash, have some reserves if you're traveling or even if you're at home. 3, continue to prep your foods, and remember to prep what you eat. I did put a video out earlier. I think a lot of people have also mentioned it. You need to be able to eat what the hell you're storing. So don't store shit that you don't like, because that makes no sense. Lastly, maintain calm, okay? All the information I told you, all this instability is studying patterns. And as an engineer, as a math guy, I love looking at patterns. That's been one of the recurring themes of my career, is to take a chaotic environment and turn it into something coherent that becomes profitable business. I'm applying those same skills to what I read and see, right? Instead of panicking, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of street instability. I need to double check my EDC. I need to make sure I have a first aid kit in my truck. I need to make sure I have this and that and so on. Make those plans now. Be systemic, stay in budget. Don't do what certain people say. Oh, you run up your credit card because somebody said that 3 years ago, and guess what? We still haven't collapsed yet, but I guarantee you somebody ran up more debt than they can handle, and that's going to hurt them. Now, if you do have ability to finagle your budget, I would definitely count on, like the hacks I just mentioned, count on power outages, count on bank outages, stuff like that. Have those things, even if you just have a small jacker or even the little baby portable solar panel to charge a phone. That's better than nothing. You can do preps really cheap, or you can get really expensive depending on where you are and what your situation is. So don't freak out if somebody has a Jackery 5 million and they're like, oh, I can power my whole house, and you can't afford that. You're lucky you can afford C batteries. That's okay. Work around what you can pull off and collaborate with folks around you. Ask questions. I love going into coffee shops. I see cops. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I just bullshit with the cops, bullshit with the firefighters, talk to the manager at the grocery store. I learned something in business over 25 years. Those personal relationships, being able to approach people and not be weird and just come up and chat with folks, God, it helps me gain so much insight into what's going on in the world. Wherever I am, I've gone to Argentina, I've gone to Europe. I find people, if I can speak their language, even better. If not, I'll find someone who can translate. Just BS over beer, and you'd be shocked what you learn, and it really informs your insights. So guys, I'm gonna leave it at that. A lot of ground level instability, and it's starting to not only percolate up into kicking out of presidents and attacks on leaders, but it's going from the small countries to the bigger ones. And it's going to be a while before this settles down. So what you want to do is not be the person on the street if something pops off. And if you are, you want to have what you need in your hotel room to go gray. Having some dogs in the house doesn't hurt either. So anyway, folks, on that note, UPS has arrived and upset the dogs. So I'm going to call this one God bless, Godspeed, and I hope to see you in the next live, which hopefully will be next Tuesday-ish, I think. Anyway, guys, take care of yourselves. And again, don't panic, plan. Be good.